sometime soon. At some point we have to begin. And I'll wait 5 more minutes.
Be patient.
Yes, well, I actually moved from the United States, but I was there for Thanksgiving, and then anyways, it was the holidays, and then I'm in my second year of my studying at LLM. I don't know if you know my Yes, and then I decided just on my way back
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first session of the day. I feel like the time has come to begin. I feel a certain solemnity and quiet has come into the room, and you are all expecting a great spectacle of legal discussion, and we will be sure to deliver. This is a great honor to chair this session. We have a series of really fascinating papers that I think will spark some interesting debate. My name is Mark Sundahl, and I'm a professor of law at Cleveland State University, where I'm the director of the Global Space Law Center, which I always say, and it's true, is the first U.S. space law center dedicated exclusively to the study of the law of outer space. There are others in the world, such as India, particularly I can think of. But in the United States, we have that distinct honor. I've been working with Giuseppe for some years, and I'm a member of the Moon Village Association, as you all, I hope, are as well. I'm also a member of the GEGSLA, the Global Expert Group on Sustainable Lunar Activities. And we will be speaking about the GEGSLA. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. We'll be speaking about the GEGSLA today, and we'll be speaking about many rather abstract ideas. But the goal of the GEGSLA and the Moon Village Association as well is to have practical effect on the issues of the day, the issues that are being faced right now by operators and those who are planning operations, issues that are faced by investors, by insurance companies, by governments, as well as private companies. Many issues that need to be resolved as we evolve the space industry and space exploration and return to the moon to stay. The Global Expert Group has been working on the recommended framework and the key elements for peaceful and sustainable lunar activities. And so this is the document to know and the publication to have. If you would like your own copy, I recommend that you, it's probably available on the website, but I would ask Giuseppe, he might have one in his pocket as well. Practicality. That's what I would like to focus on today. There are going to be a number of presentations regarding specific issues, such as space resources. And I hope that we can really drill down on the pertinent issues and take a step forward together. This is a rather intimate group. I hope for a good deal of interaction. The beauty of the GEGSLA, and I think it's reflected in this room, is its interdisciplinary nature. We have lawyers here, but not too many. Not too many lawyers. We also have engineers, and we also have great representation geographically from all around the world. Before I bring our other speakers up, I'm not going to be doing all the talking here. Far from it, I hope. I will be here to introduce other speakers, but I first have the honor to deliver the first presentation, which was to be delivered by Dr. Ulpia Botețatu from Romania, who you may know, and if you don't know her, you should know her, because she has ascended to the chair of the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee of the COPUOS. And so she will be a pivotal figure in the future evolution of the law of outer space, and she is also a very active member of the Moon Village Association as well, and has been very helpful in my work in regards to the GEGSLA as well. So Ulpia is not able to be here with us today, and we send her our warmest regards, and she asked me if I would step in and talk a little bit about the framework and the current implementation phase of the GEGSLA. So with that, I will go through some slides here, and I promise I'm not going to read all the slides. That is what is known as death by PowerPoint. And I will not subject you to it, but I will call out a few issues here. Just to focus on a couple of words that are at the core of the mission of the GEGSLA. Address critical lunar issues with the goal of de-risking future lunar missions and increasing global cooperation. Global cooperation, de-risking future missions. The GEGSLA was begun in 2020. Now we're in 2024. We've really completed a good deal of work. I was once involved with the Hague International Working Group on the governance of space resources. I can never get that title quite right, but I was part of that, and that was a very elaborate project, but only dealt with space resources. The GEGSLA is taking on the rest of lunar governance and many other issues. And we've completed the first phase of our work. And now we're on to the second phase, but let me first wet my whistle. Let me just read out a couple of the subject matters of the framework here. Information sharing, something that is near and dear to my heart. Article 11, Registration Convention. It all begins with information sharing. And then we go on from there. Safe operations, interoperability. You've heard all of these words before. Lunar governance, benefits for humanity. And the MVA has a separate project with respect to sharing of benefits that's it's also available. So I recommend looking into that. Sustained lunar economy, human interaction. The scope of the framework is broad. And the framework is finished. And these are recommendations, of course, non-binding, soft law, so much of which we see today because of I'll throw this out there, and I don't mean it accusatorially, but some might say the failure of our governments to provide clarity in the regulatory environment in outer space. And we are left to regulate ourselves. And there are many good initiatives out there, but would be better if we could all agree on a law. But it is as it is, and we have completed this new vessel of soft law, the framework, but the work of the GEGSLA is not done. We created the framework, and now we are trying to give it teeth, implement the ideas. What does it mean on the ground, on the moon, to have this framework, these ideas, these concepts, principles? How does it translate into operations? And that's where the GEGSLA is right now. We have 3 implementation phase working groups, one with respect to environmental protection. What exactly does it mean? It's in the Outer Space Treaty, but we're all faced with this question of what does the Outer Space Treaty mean when it says, not to contaminate outer space. And working group is taking a deep dive into that. And here are our co-chairs and the members. A good-looking group. Working group 2, technical coordination. Some would say that not information sharing, that's not the most important. Interoperability, that's the most important. That's what we saw with this inability of the space suits to be interoperable with the different space capsules. Wasn't a problem with information sharing, interoperability. I won't rank them. They're both equally important. But we have a working group dealing with that. And this is where the engineers and the technical experts are most active in the GEGSLA. And here we have our beautiful group of working group 2 members. And then finally, and this one has a special place in my heart, it's working group 3 on lunar multi-stakeholder coordination. And I have the honor of being the co-chair of that. And I was the co-chair along with Mr. Yu Shu from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. After completing this phase of our work, Yu Shu was reassigned. But as you all may know, Dr. Wang Zhongmin, who spoke multiple times yesterday, has stepped in and is now the co-chair of this working group. And our work so far has been focused on recommending a platform at the international level for sharing operational information so that we all know what everyone's doing, again, to de-risk, to enable to operate with due regard, and maybe to share best practices and talk about common issues. But it's this platform for informational exchange that we've been working on. And we've completed our report on that for the most part. We're about to, next week, hopefully put the final stamp on it. And then we will be moving into a new phase. A new phase of, again, more clearly explaining how the ideas of coordination and cooperation can be implemented on the surface of the moon. And the heart of that coordination and cooperation would be between the Artemis program and the ILRS. So that's where we are with the GEGSLA and the implementation phase. It's ongoing, and many of you are active in it. So I thank you for that. And with that, I will, yes, I will accept a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Well done, Giuseppe. And with that, I will invite our first speaker. Ariel, would you like to take the podium? I'd like to do a proper... and if I may, before you launch into your speech, this is Ariel Silverman. She has an interesting duo of affiliations, the U.S. Department of State and Peking University, so I very much look forward to her talk.
Great. Professor Sandel, you're very tall. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ariel Silverman. I am a Yenching Scholar at Peking University studying Chinese approaches to international law. It's an absolute privilege to be here with the Moon Village Association. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Next slide, please. And of course, the topic today is comparative American and Chinese approaches to shaping international law. Oh, do you have the remotes? Or? There we go. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, so we're already familiar that outer space mining is the theoretical extraction and utilization of resources on the moon, near-Earth celestial bodies, near-Earth asteroids, and other celestial bodies. And of course, this is used for in situ resource extraction. This is the production of permanent settlements on the moon to propel future space exploration, and also for the theoretical retrieval of these resources back to the moon for commercial and scientific purposes. And yet, of course, as is the case with international law throughout, you have vague and outdated norms, especially around outer space resource governance. And as a result, this allows for spacefaring nations and increasingly the private sector to be able to rapidly shape norms around conduct, which over a long period of time may lead to the generation of custom. And of course, the state actors with the disproportionate technical advantage in these spheres is China and the United States. And yet, of course, as a result of widely different domestic economic compositions and historical relationships to international law, we find that approaches to shaping international norms around natural resource extraction in space vary significantly differently between these two countries. So the question that I'm going to be trying to answer today is what continuities and discontinuities exist in the United States and PRC's approaches to shaping international laws and norms around natural resource extraction. And answering this question rigorously has implications not only for understanding what is the supply of critical minerals to the Earth going forward into the future centuries, and also the composition of the future international legal order as it currently stands, given the PRC and United States' widely different interpretations. I'm also going to end also with an evaluation of what are the implications of understanding China's approach to international law, since I think generally the audience would be a little bit less familiar with China's understanding of its role in the international order. And just to pause first, what I mean by approach is, first of all, what are the different substantive policy issues that these countries are trying to advocate in international spheres, and also what are the tactics they're using in order to bring these policies about, either in institutions of international law or in their actions. Wonderful. So quickly, I'm going to run through some gaps in international outer space law, then go into the United States and PRC's comparative approaches before discussing implications for the international order. Wonderful. So of course, we have the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. And the two most applicable articles for outer space mining governance, natural resource governance, are Articles 1 and 2. And I quote, for Article 1, outer space exploration and use shall be carried out for the benefit and in the interests of all countries, and shall be the province of all of mankind. And Article 2 states that outer space is not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty, by means of use or occupation, or by any other means. So, of course, here in Article 2, it's clear that that a state actor is not allowed to appropriate an entire celestial body and claim it as their sovereign territory. And yet, the definition of use is a little bit more ambiguous. So, as at least is stated in the letter of the law, it is not entirely clear whether a state actor or private entity is legally allowed to appropriate those resources and claim and own them. And yet, of course, state consensus and increasingly state practice is leading to an interpretation that mining is legal under international law and would clearly fall under the scope of use. Now, you also have other substantive issues of outer space mining law, which are currently undecided, and also, of course, have implications for understanding Chinese and American approaches. The second one that I will be discussing today is benefit sharing. So how should the resource use and equitable sharing be interpreted? What mechanisms are there in place in order to distribute equally the uses of resources mined from the moon and other celestial bodies? And also, generally, how should we steward the environment, especially in this hazardous and understudied lunar environment, and also in a state-centric international order, what are the rights and obligations of the private sector and their state-sponsoring entities in this system? Of course, we have the Moon Agreement, so the international community came together in 1979 in order to try to clarify some of these ambiguities in international law. And this group of states decided that the moon and its resources should be understood as the common heritage of mankind, which implies some understanding of communal ownership. And also they banned any appropriation by any single state or actor, which concerned the international community, worrying that there was going to be a moratorium on the ownership of of celestial resources until an international legal framework for distributing resources could be devised. And of course, as a result of wariness about this provision, only 18 state actors signed this treaty, and as a result, this treaty has not reached the level of customary international law. So as a result, we have all of these different ambiguities in international law, outdated norms, which then result in rapid generation of norms, and as a result, have actors with technical capabilities being able to capture somewhat of a first mover advantage, one in the shaping of norms in this international legal system, and also in potentially appropriating resources on a first mover advantage. So I'll first talk about the United States. On these areas of substantive issues of international mining law. First, the United States has had a long-standing policy that commercial ownership of resources from celestial bodies are legal, and as well. Sorry, let me just change my notes. And you see that in in their facilitation, one of the Apollo missions, up until their support of the commercial space industry to the present. You also see, in terms of benefit sharing, the United States is certainly engaged in scientific collaborations with a range of partners and allies, and yet you see the United States government generally interpreting the province of mankind as one in which its domestic stakeholders are allowed to utilize space resources so long as they do not preclude others from navigating space and using resources. Additionally, you see the United States government increasingly taking on the role as a facilitator of the domestic space commercial industry. You see this through its establishment of partnerships with academia and industry, promoting research and development, the millions of dollars of grants that it is providing to private entities every year for the developing technologies around commercial mining extraction, and also it's increasingly experimenting with permitting systems for a range of different foreign and domestic entities, which allow it to work out some of the technical and legal quirks related to the development of a robust domestic space resource extractive industry. You also see, lastly, that the United States sees itself as having a clear obligation under Article 6 of the Outer Space Treaty in order to regularly supervise private entities acting in outer space commercial development, and yet, of course, the authority designated to regulate these entities has not yet been prescribed. And it's something that we're going to need to watch very closely as a result of Elon Musk's increasing, I guess, role in the administration going forward. So in terms of categorizing its approach, I would categorize the United States' approach to international mining law as one of where it is constantly striving for capturing first mover advantages and also promoting somewhat of a top-down advancement in terms of generating norms in international spheres. You see this through its promulgation of the Space Act of 2015, which was the first instance of any government reassuring private corporations that they have rights to space resource ownership. And you also see the United States in 2020 promulgating the Artemis Accords, which is a series of bilateral treaties in which it is generating norms around responsible conduct in space, including verifying private property rights in space. So the story that we have in the PRC is pretty different, one that I will categorize instead of top-down as one more of bottom-up in international norms. So the PRC has not promulgated domestic legislation or any substantive policy specifically verifying that private property rights exist for space ownership. And yet you see in the PRC's engagement, certainly with commercial actors and state practice of appropriating resources through the Chang'e Lunar Exploration Program, that it does support this policy. Now, we think that the PRC has not promulgated this domestic legislation as of right now because there is significantly greater state oversight and also military integration with the commercial space sector in the PRC, and specifically verifying private property rights for commercial actors would perhaps preclude the PRC, the state, from acquiring these resources for their own scientific purposes. And yet it is very possible that in the future, particularly with the future generation of norms around domestic legislation in space, that the PRC will promulgate this legislation. And as a result of not having this domestic legislation, there are somewhat unclear rules around liability of private actors and the state and private sector's responsibility in space. Also regarding benefit sharing, the PRC faces somewhat of a historical dilemma with regards to how they are going to mechanize the sharing of the benefits of space resources. On the one hand, historically, the PRC continues to be a developing country, but was not a technical leader in the space sector, and as a result, wants to be seen as a responsible actor in the international community and a leader of the developing states, and a result has an intention in order to support their colleagues in developing and utilizing space resources equitably. On the other hand, of course, they want to have a supply of critical minerals going forward, and of course, secure access to the utilization of space. So you see their interpretation of this very much reflected in that historical contrast. And you see them trying to mechanize the benefits, one through sharing technology or sharing information through the UN Spider program, and also forging inclusive partnerships through the International Lunar Space Station. And very much in this theme of China's historical approach to international law, I would interpret the PRC not wanting to generate norms outside of conventional international institutions like the US is doing. Instead, they are very much hoping to generate conventional law within the United Nations and have not promulgated norms outside of that. And then, of course, when conventional law within the United Nations has been blocked as a result of geopolitical deadlock, certainly the PRC is not holding back from adopting a first mover approach in terms of shaping norms around activity very much through its own actions through the Chang'e Lunar Exploration Program and also its project-based treaties around the International Lunar Research Station. So very quickly, I'll sum up just by discussing some of the implications of China's international legal approach. On the one hand, I would interpret the PRC's actions and also its focus on benefit sharing and partnerships, one as reflecting very much so its preoccupation with its international legal standing, want to be seen as a responsible actor within the developing world and the international community in general. And yet, of course, it is also instrumentalizing the utilization of its technical capabilities and also its role within in the United Nations and international legal institutions in general in order to promulgate its interpretation of the law as one reflected of multilateralism within the United Nations. And yet, of course, it is certainly willing to operate within the gray zones of a very weak outer space treaty in order to certainly capture a first mover advantage in these spheres. And I will conclude with that. Thank you so much. Okay.
Would you like to take a question?
Do I have time?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
Invite questions from the audience. I will take the prerogative as you formulate your questions. I'll take the prerogative here of the chair and ask one myself. Do you see any way for a private company or a state to, in a sense, stake a claim to being able to operate, to mine part of the moon in advance of beginning operations, like while raising money, while preparing technologically? Is there any mechanism that you see that provides for some way to preserve their right to mine a certain area on the moon?
That's a great question, and to my understanding, it's still somewhat of an open question, and we already see, the actors in this room are almost assuming a sale and going up there and generating norms. And as a result, and I think it's relevant to then ask the question of, well, should we put the brakes on and as an international community come together in order to fully establish rights and responsibilities of the private sector? And yet I think the example of the United States experimenting with some of the permitting is perhaps a first start, and we're not yet at the stage technologically where we have a full-scale, robust commercial industry, and yet we're very much getting there. And the thing that keeps me up at night is the fact that we're not able to generate conventional international law because principles and norms are, of course, non-binding.
Thank you very much. Another question. It looks like you are free to go.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much. Let's give some applause. Nicely done. I have the honor now of bringing our next speaker up. And that was a fascinating presentation. I have more questions, but I'll get to them later. Our next speaker is Ganesh Unavar. Welcome to the podium. And Ganesh will be speaking about an eternal conflict or peaceful coexistence. Again, a comparative study of the Artemis Accords and the ILRS. I very much look forward to your talk.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a great honor to be here, to be able to talk about the subject, and I especially want to thank Ariel. I don't think we could have synchronized our presentations better if we talked about it, so I will just take all the advantage I can, pivoting from what you've already said. And also thank you so much for not digging into the Artemis Accords and the ILRS, because I think you would have done a much better job than I will now. So my name is Güneş. I am the legal advisor for the Moon Village Association. But in addition to that, I'm a senior researcher at the University of Luxembourg, Luxembourg Center for European Law, and a counsel on space law and regulation at the Luxembourg law firm Wood. So this is one of the research projects that I'm pursuing, primarily under my hat of a senior researcher. But of course, I have also recently joined the Working Group 3 on the multi-stakeholder coordination at GEGSLA. So this is something that goes directly to the heart of that research. And I'm hoping to sort of continue that research and contribute to the Working Group 3's already amazing work. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the Artemis Accords and ILRS as norm establishing platforms and how they compare to one another, and whether or not there is any cooperative common ground. The title says Governance of Lunar Resources, but I'll try to keep it a bit broader, even though the emphasis will be on the resource extraction and use. So as I think it's a bit small, I apologize for that. So as you are all aware, I'm sure, currently we talk about these two global lunar projects that are usually positioned against one another as competing projects in sort of wrapped around the discourse of a space race, and the positioning, the discourse is usually quite adversarial, which I think from the outset is in itself a problem. Right? It creates a sort of tension, and changing that discourse as to emphasize the cooperation and synchronization and harmonization at some point would probably be a better way to go. This is an observation from the outset, I think. They are both principally scientific exploration projects. This is also something that I suppose, know quite well. But the Artemis program sort of supplemented itself with these so-called Artemis Accords, which set a series of foundational principles. ILRS, likewise, is a scientific research project that includes state and non-state actors. And as I will come to that, its foundational principles, its essence in terms of norm-making, as a norm-making platform, is less obvious than the Artemis program, as it doesn't have what we could call an equivalent of the Artemis Accords. So the overarching question here is that I'm interested in is, can these programs, can these projects embrace their commonalities and sort of foster a cooperative governance model that can work for both parties and all the other stakeholders that will operate in the future. And I think, again, going back to the Working Group 3's work, this is really the essence of I suppose, what Working Group 3 will achieve. And I think, talking about this, I have also continuously reflect on the Working Group 3 and GEGSLA's role in general on whether we can make this a reality with its assistance as well. And as Ariel very eloquently put, there is an upsurge in law and policy debates. Lawmaking is something that has picked up pace concerning the concept of the use and exploration of outer space. And space mining, resource extraction is a very hot topic. But one very important angle to this is very relevant to the audience in this group and upstairs is actually that private entities have risen to the challenge of complementing, even replacing states' activities in that regard, that we see an increased role that falls upon the shoulders of private entities, not only in terms of research and development, but actually operation and future extraction of these resources. And the important consequence of this is not only for private entities, but for perhaps the general framework. Lunar economy, if it's going to develop into a sprawling, commercially viable economy, it needs legal and political certainty to thrive. And I think this is one of these sort of underlying challenges to, and something that creates a certain urgency around this is that for us to actually talk about a lunar economy, this is a hurdle that we need to jump over. So Artemis Accords has a number of principles that it clearly lays out. Just to name a few, it asks its members to publicly describe policies and plans in a transparent manner. It emphasizes interoperability of systems and compatibility of systems used by the Artemis countries. This is perhaps an important qualification here. Commitment to the Rescue Convention and complying with or signing and ratifying, for those who haven't yet, the Registration Convention, which are 2 other UN treaties that essentially govern, establish the foundation of international space law. Timely, full, and open sharing of scientific data, again, among Artemis members. The protection of sites and artifacts with historic value, such as the Apollo landing sites, for example, or the footsteps. Space resource utilization and extraction. Again, I won't repeat what Ariel said, but basically Artemis Accords, in a way, attempts to internationalize the US approach through a purportedly non-binding political instrument to sort of ensure that a political bloc is created around the idea that space resources can be owned. And so far, judging by the number of signatories, this view seems to be picking some popularity. So this is basically, in terms of resource extraction at least, the clear, not only legal, but political position of the Artemis signatories. Providing public information regarding the location and general nature of their operations in an effort to ensure proper implementation of the so-called safety zones. This is a very, very controversial subject. It's not entirely clear how these safety zones will operate, but it goes directly to the heart of non-intervention with lunar operations or other celestial operations. And then it envisages a general framework for the mitigation of orbital debris that it does not really detail. These are, Artemis Accords are it's a very short document. It has, I think, 13 titles, and it's a couple of pages only. So this is, let's say, a very broad framework for these principles. The ILRS, at least we can presume that a lot of these things ILRS shares. The framework is largely implied because ILRS does not really have what you could call an Artemis Accords. It simply does not have that. It has certain guiding principles, and we can extract bits and pieces from mostly Chinese submissions to forums like UN COPUOS, what it thinks about these items. Though we can say, at least with a relative certainty, that China has reiterated its commitment to international space treaties such as OST and constantly emphasizes peaceful uses of outer space. That's its overarching position. It emphasizes in every opportunity the importance of information sharing. It clearly envisages the use of space resources. This is also something that is included in ILRS documents directly. It has no illusions about not using these space resources. I think it's very clear to everybody. I don't think this is a controversial issue anymore. But it's not entirely clear, as again Ariel said, about the implications of rights attached to these resources. But it will be used. One thing that we can add to this, which I think is very important, is its submission to the subcommittee of the Space Resources Working Group at the UN COPUOS, is that it acknowledges, I think, publicly for the first time, at least in English language, that commercial uses of space resources may happen, but it has to happen, or it should happen, under strict supervision of the states. So from this, we can also say that there is a clear recognition of some sort that space resources will be used also commercially. This, I think, is a very important, often overlooked detail. Its reaction to this envisaged safety zones in the context of Artemis Accords is not clear, though we can also say with certainty that China and other ILRS members also do not want undue intervention with regards to their operations. So there is also a common ground there. It very effectively leverages and promotes the participation of non-state actors within its framework. Artemis Accords Artemis program does have non-state actors, but the Artemis Accords themselves cannot be signed by states, cannot be signed by non-state actors. ILRS, in my opinion, is much more pragmatic about this, that it counts and boasts its membership, non-state actor membership, if they can perform a task within the project. Artemis Accords have a more, let's say, traditional international law-centric approach to that. It's very much space-based, at least on the surface. China has no space law, again, as Ariel said, but it does have a series of very elaborate administrative acts. It has a very robust framework for orbital debris mitigation, for example, that has finalized reportedly in 2015, though this is second-hand information, which had been interim measures from 2009 to 2015, and 2015 onwards, apparently it has been just administrative measures and non-interim. So a lot of the foundational principles that are laid out in the context of Artemis Accords, ILRS/China actually shares. And when we actually look at these commonalities, and I apologize for the rather provocative title, peaceful coexistence or eternal conflict, I think peaceful coexistence is not only possible, but arguably it's something very probable. And this might come as very optimistic, but I think the facts say that a lot of things are actually in common. There are a lot of commonalities. One of them is one of the biggest manifestations of these shared commonalities, to me at least, was very evident during the UNOSA Conference on Sustainable Lunar Activities, which was an informal gathering just before the COPO session, plenary session, where the Chinese and American representatives were sitting in the same panel and actually, almost a common voice, telling the world how they share some of these principles, and they actually want to carry forward with the best of intentions in good faith issues such as standardization, information sharing, interoperability, sustainability of lunar activities, inclusiveness, openness and transparency, and assistance in accordance with the Rescue Convention. These are, at least, again, in principle, are things that are shared. Other issues that require a elaborated common understanding, arguably, are space resource utilization and a global consensus around the ownership, because this is, again, it's a source of anxiety for a lot of stakeholders that want to operate on the moon on the basis of space resources, but they don't really know exactly what kind of interference could take place vis-a-vis their operations, which affects, of course, capital raising and even research and development efforts, if I may say so. And another very important issue is non-interference with each other's operations, especially when a certain stakeholder on the moon wants to retain information that they want to keep and not necessarily share with the others. And again, this has to be somehow balanced out with the shared goal of information sharing and transparency and openness. This was also emphasized yesterday in one of the panels, as some of you might recall. I will quickly conclude. As I said, there's a lot of common ground between these initiatives. And I would argue, take it a step forward, that peaceful coexistence is not only the desired outcome, it is arguably an obligation under international law. And this really comes from the fact that Outer Space Treaty is very clear that states need to cooperate. States need to use and explore space peacefully. This is not an option, this is not a desire, this is not wishful thinking that international law prescribes. International law is very clear on the terms of engagement with outer space, and one of them is cooperation. And I think a common shared legal and political consensus, at least some of the identified issues here, will relieve the sectoral reluctance, the pressure, the tension caused by this perpetual legal and political ambiguity. And this might actually help companies to take bolder steps, more risk, channel more funding into these projects, and speed up the process of industrialization and the creation of lunar economy. And one final note is, again, trust is the driver of the process. We identify these common points, But what really stops processes like COPOS in its tracks, in my opinion, is the lack of trust, which needs to be fostered. Obviously, it's not given, it's earned, but this is perhaps something we also need to include in our discourse rather than talking about adversarial relations and a so-called space race. Thank you very much. Questions, if you have any.
No time for questions.
Okay.
I'm going to have to put my foot on the gas here, but I do want to thank Ganesh again for a really fascinating presentation. I wish we had time, but I'm going to ask, because we started a little late, so maybe we can make up some time here, but I would like to ask Juan Nolasco to please join me at the podium here, and he's one of the more active GEGSLA members. He's going to talk to us about the sharing of benefits. So please.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone. For me, it's an honor and a privilege to present the benefit sharing project on behalf of Chris Bosquillon. Couldn't not be here, but will be a pity not to show the fantastic work that he and his team have done. The benefit sharing project was launched by the Moon Village Association in late 2022. Is part of the MVA Adaptive Governance Working Group projects, and the co-chairs are Suyan Malhadas and Chris Bosquillon. The goals. The primary goal of the BSP project is to identify concrete mechanisms that enable access to and benefit sharing in the lunar and cislunar activities. The BSP aims to provide a detailed analysis of challenges, opportunities, and the necessary frameworks. Such mechanisms need to work in a globally competitive context of cis and lunar exploration and resource utilization. About the assessments, the BSP gathered a diverse team of 50 international members to the necessity to reduce the 3G gap, geography, gender, and generation, and also the need for international cooperation and inclusive professional practice. In the preliminary assessment of the space research utilization, the SRU and the Moon aren't more reserved to dominant space powers only, as we have saw here, but also the current legal frameworks fall short, and the concrete mechanisms to start with information sharing and capacity building. Also support entrepreneurs and innovators and enable coordination among the stakeholders. Conditions for emerging space countries to reach their full potential. Educational opportunities, capacity building, and also access to cis and lunar activities. Results. In the legal assessment and concrete legal mechanism framework, we identify key legal topics in the assessing economic model compatibility, information sharing, and environmental and societal impact. It also were addressed the gaps in the Outer Space Treaty, and also to clarify the ownership rights, facilitating information sharing, ensuring sustainability and public policy considerations. In the part of the operational assessment and concrete operational mechanisms, the structural development, the lunar diplomatic process, and also the lunar SciTech applications. In the framework of the International Lunar Stakeholders Coordination Concrete Mechanisms, were identified the centralization of the coordination through UN bodies and relevant task forces, harmonizing the national space laws. Also, integrating private sector and civil society in the decision-making process, and also the capacity building for emerging space countries, developing a framework for educational and workforce infrastructure in seas and lunar resources utilization. Deliverables already done. A long-form light paper under review, presenting the results and the way forward. Also, upcoming late 2024 and early 2025, long-term BASP technical paper, a short-form BASP policy paper, and potentially a short-form BSP way forward paper. Overall, BSP status as early the fourth quarter 2024. The BSP light paper provides a comprehensive overview of the challenges, opportunities, and necessary frameworks for access and benefit sharing of SEA's lunar activities. It emphasizes international cooperation, legal clarity, and capacity building for emerging space countries. The Moon offers significant economic opportunities to be shared, and effective coordination among governments, private sector, international bodies is crucial for peaceful and sustainable lunar activities. The BSP advocates for flexible benefit-sharing mechanisms to build trust between stakeholders, ensure broad public support for lunar activities. Finally, emphasizing benefit sharing in key lunar diplomacy sessions, focusing on information sharing, the BSP aims to foster a new lunar activities model that foster international cooperation, aiming at inward benefits for Earth and outward benefits for exploration of the solar system. Concluding, Chris and his team put the message that we are in all this together. The first hashtag is in Portuguese, means that we are in all this together. In 2025, we'll have more BSP deliverables and conclusion. And if you have any questions about this project, please address to Chris Bosquillon, that will be very happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan. And I've been a fan of this project for some time. It's another one of those abstract concepts, sharing of benefits. What does it mean? And I think we're hopefully getting closer to an understanding of what it means. It's very critical. So at this point, I'd like to invite our next speaker. And bear with me, please. Here we have, a very high-tech talk. And I'm learning, looking forward to learning quite a bit here. I'd like to invite Harry Lars Gilliman to the podium, who will be speaking about decentralized autonomous organizations, tokenization, finance. The microphone is yours.
I hope I didn't scare you too much with the title. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. So my name is Harry. I'm a lawyer specialized in capital and capital structuring in Luxembourg. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Luxembourg House of Web3, which is a not-for-profit organization advocating for the adoption of Web3 and blockchain technology in wider civil society in Luxembourg, but above all in the financial sector. We are the quickest growing online community in Luxembourg for the last 2 years. And I was previously the legal advisor of the Moon Village Association before Junesh, who is my partner in the law firm. So it's a very exciting morning for me today. Today we will discuss how blockchain technology can actually help one of the other big schemas or schisms that we have during our lifetimes. In my opinion, there are probably 3: longevity, us becoming an interplanetary species, during our lifetime. Second one, and blockchain technology that allows for more decentralized cooperation and finance models. But today we will focus more on the financing side. Why blockchain and why decentralization? If you actually think about it, just our universe, it is decentralized, right? We shouldn't be only focusing on the sun. There's also the moon. But if you see where we are at what we at least know, we are somewhere on the edge of the Milky Way, of the solar system, of the universe, and so on. We haven't quite grasped it yet, right? But today, in our lifetime, we live in a very centralized world, both probably from a governance perspective, politically, with centralized states and actors, but above all, also economically. We live in a capitalistic, materialistic world, which means that for very big ventures, just like space ventures, it's very difficult to raise adequately capital. These are the traditional phases of raising capital. And in the space sector, it's very hard for the first phases, where you have friends, fools, and family, angels and grants, up towards venture capital to survive the value of debt. That's why a lot of space companies, they benefit hugely from grants that are actually public money, or you have state bodies, basically, a space agency that pour money into that industry up until it becomes a viable sector. So we were thinking in the autumn of 2021, that's very weird because, there are so many people that are willing to invest a lot of money in projects to send Shiba to the moon, for instance, cryptocurrencies, to go to the metaverse, a purely virtual world that doesn't even exist. Whereas during our lifetimes, we are going to the universe and to the moon. So let's redirect all that energy and that money, from an imagined thing to something that is happening in our lifetime. I'll go very quickly over this slide because this just compares the weaknesses of the traditional fundraising methods for space. The first one are grants. With the grant, the last row, you never will have enough money, to effectively go to space. Debt is problematic because with debt, most space companies do not have a revenue model that allows them to meet the interest payment dates. Venture capital and private equity are models that work quite well, but there's a systemic political challenge because most of the capital comes from the United States. Of course, that's not a problem as such, but if you get the capitalist in your company structure, essentially you give access to the technology, to strategic decisions and so on, which can create a challenge in terms of systemic geopolitical independence. Whereas the stock market, there are not so many companies that are on the stock market. And by the way, currently in the stock market, we see more take private things happening. So it comes to pair with a lot of challenges, the financing the space sector. This is the trilemma that we try to solve. With the variety of actors, there are multiple space DAOs now that are in the beginning phases. But basically, there are 3 things that are trying to be solved with DAOs. First, for the space companies, it is granting access to sufficient funding while engaging the public. Remember the Outer Space Treaty of 67, where we said that the exploration and use of outer space is for the province of all humankind, right? There are a lot of people actually just watching from the sidelines. And if you look a little bit at cryptocurrencies and blockchain, this is what this technology allows, you know, to get engaged. You have an internet connection and a phone, and in a centralized or decentralized state, doesn't really matter. You can get access to it. The general public being engaged, and then also strategic autonomy to be your own project owner and be a community-based economy. I always show this painting from the 17th century, I would say. This is a ship of the East India Company sailing around Cape de Goede Hope in South Africa. And why is it actually comparable to what we are talking about now? Is because in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, in 1602, a new system was invented, right? You know, you got for the first time the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, where people put together their money and their savoir-faire to create a company to go on a very long, big, unknown exploration, right? They didn't know what the world was and how it would be. And of course, a lot of missions failed, but some of them succeeded. And this created, or was actually the start of capitalism as we know it today. Of course, the pendulum is now swinging back. But in any event, it created the biggest company the world has ever seen for the next 2 centuries to come. You know, so sometimes it are these type of governance, collaboration, financial models that really create a shift in society. And in my view, we are at the beginning of a next shift again with the DAOs that Junesh will tell you more about.
Hi, me again. So I very quickly, I want to go over the enigma that is a decentralized autonomous organization and tell you a bit about how it can help in the way that we imagine about, we think about incorporation within the space sector. So decentralized, or DAOs, I will call them for short, they are organizational entities, not unlike companies in certain ways, facilitating human interaction and property, asset, or financial management according to a code-based automated protocol. So it's a collective of humans and code that are geared towards a goal. This goal can be anything. What makes it decentralized as opposed to, for example, a traditional corporate structure is that there is technically no CEO, no top management team. There is something comparable to a steering committee, you can say perhaps, and it emphasizes democratic participatory processes more than a top-down decision-making protocol. No brick and mortar headquarters, no subsidiaries, strictly speaking, no employees either. It is essentially a distributed network of users who collect, verify, and update transactions on blockchain. There are certain distinctions between participatory and algorithmic DAOs. This I won't go into as we don't have a lot of time. But one of the key issues here is that there is a multitude of jurisdictions spanning thousands of members. So they're not located in one country, they're actually without one. DAO treasury, this is, you can consider these numbers to have increased at least 30% by this point. This is from May 2024. There are about, as of May, 29.4 billion US dollars within the DAO treasury, which means the total amount of money that is held by decentralized autonomous organizations globally. Some of the biggest ones are Optimism, Arbitrum, Mental. These are all essentially payment services, right? DAO structures are not standardized. They can they can take many different forms. One example, a good example, is the Optimism Foundation. There is a DAO, a blockchain-based framework, but it is supported by 2 sub-DAOs. They are also equally blockchain-based. But for other legal rights, they have a registered company at Cayman Islands, which is, again, one of the, let's say, weaker points of the DAO structure, which, just to give you a bit of a context as to where we are in terms of legislation, Marshall Islands is one of the first countries to actually recognize decentralized autonomous organizations as legal entities akin to corporations. There are other consultative processes going on, notably in the UK, and there are some legislative measures also within some states, notably Utah. What are the advantages of disadvantages? Well, fast and efficient transactions. I think blockchain, if it attests for something, it attests for its efficiency in terms of transaction speed. There is a potential for efficient pooling of capital through blockchain technology, through a more streamlined process than traditional methods of financing, much lower transaction costs. The absence of an intermediary, a financial institution, also makes it efficient in certain ways, but this can also, in certain ways come as a disadvantage, but that's to be discussed perhaps later. And the growing potential of DAO structures to engage in venture capital style investments. As popularity increases in this domain, then so will the engagement of venture capital. Democratization and legitimation of decision making, perhaps one of the key issues, especially in the space sector, where we have a bottleneck of those who can afford to fund these projects. I think it's important, for the sake of prioritizing the right projects, let's say. There is a certain effect on streamlining and fraud proofing these decision-making procedures as well, a certain degree of increased transparency, certainly, and stronger safeguards against what we can call human errors, such as misappropriation and misuse of funds. Again, it's a very new concept. I think this is its biggest shortcoming as of now. Legal recognition is very much behind. People are still a bit confused about it, myself included. I'm sure some of you are as well. It's not always possible to be fully informed about the decisions that a DAO might take. It therefore depends on active participation. And again, going forward, the idea of a full algorithmic governance can be a bit scary in the connection of the discussions regarding artificial intelligence. Again, legal recognition is one of its shortcomings. From here, I pass on to Harry, and he will conclude. Yeah? Yeah. Just maybe a word.
I think we are running out of time, so I'll make this very brief. This is an example of a onshore legal finance DAO, okay? It is designed that everybody can participate. You see at the top a Dutch foundation. A Dutch foundation is a corporate structure that has no shareholders, right? Has no owners. It's an orphan structure. It's managed in function of a certain purpose, which can be for profit. That is very Dutch for a foundation. So the management company would be in Luxembourg that has a minimum equity stake, and that only does what is legally necessary for the structure to function, i.e. do tax filings, be represented in court, and so on. The structure itself is a securitization fund that can have multiple compartments, each compartment being a fully ring-fenced pool of assets for a certain project owner. So they really function, independently from one another, all with their own token, which we call a campaign token. The platform token is the community token, where the communities buy and sell from one another, and then also attach a certain utility to it, so attend to earn, play to earn, and so on. Because everybody's making their own space company close to space, but it requires a lot of effort, right? It requires a lot of people, a lot of exchanges. So I think it can only be done from a community perspective and with a certain degree of distance of, probably your own ego and your own objectives. If you think about it, in a lot of religions or cultures, there is this notion that there is the finite and the infinite. And if you believe, that energy is, what life is, then you can say that, your body, you rent it, is something temporary, and then the energy passes to something else. And this is what the DAO also transpires. For instance, Giuseppe and I, we are the same age, right? Because we are both energy. The body is just something temporary. And this comes back in a lot of things from blockchain as well. Thank you. No, don't worry.
I don't mean to be rude, but I have a feeling that now we're venturing into the supernatural, almost. So thank you for your presentation, and I certainly want to follow up on all of this. Please join me with the applause there. I had to step in. We were starting to, our feet were starting to leave the ground. But fascinating ideas about innovations in finance. I would love to talk more about it, hear your thoughts on the Cape Town Convention. But now is the time for me to ask Satoru Kuroso to please join me at the podium, who is going to be speaking about lunar development's benefits for Earth. And ask you all to please welcome him. And then we are going to have one final speaker. So please, everyone, remain for Giuseppe Ribaldi. But please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. And I have several hats, and this time I will present on behalf of my company, which I established last year. And I'd like to present the lunar benefits, lunar development benefit for the Earth. So let me briefly explain why I'm presenting this. So as I said, I'm the founder and CEO of Cross Space and Sustainability LLC, which is a kind of consulting company to promote space for sustainability. And I have a unique career that I used to be the CSO, Chief Sustainability Officer of a multi-billion-dollar company, Yoko Electric Corporation, and attended the UN meetings like COP26 in Glasgow, one SDG summit in the New York headquarters. So CSO started space business, which is quite kind of unique. And so from the beginning, I am very keen to find what is the unique benefit of space, which can contribute to the Earth. So this is my agenda. What is a value of space for the Earth? And then I will pick up some practical example, which I'm also the employee of the Yoko Electric Corporation, and what we are doing in the Yoko Electric Corporation as an example. So what is a new value of space? The reason why I'm keen to talk about it is I'm a marketing professional, and there are lots of good things, but we are not so good at telling clearly what's the benefit in a short word. So I'm trying to create a kind of framework which I like to get your feedback, which is which makes sense or not. So let me start from come back to the history of human beings. More than about 20,000 years ago, we are human beings born in Africa, and gradually spread to the world on foot, first dimensionally. And in the 15th century, Harry nicely explained about the sailing ships. So this is kind of a new technology at that time for the European to spread to the world in the widely manner, in a second dimension manner. And now we are from the 20th century. We are finally going to the third dimensional manner to go to the space. And the big breakthrough is the large renewable rocket. So when we are going out to the space, so our perception completely changed. And Mr. Frank White wrote the famous book of Overview Effect. So after interviewing many astronauts, he noticed that they are talking almost the same thing. The Earth is very beautiful, but on the other hand, atmosphere is very thin, paper thin, and also very fragile, so that they all feel that responsible to protect the Earth environment. So I created this framework called the space value triangle, starting from overview effect, and also the extreme environment, and the limit breakthrough. I call it the space value triangle. So what do I mean by that? Overview effect, as I said, that if we see the Earth from the space, we can see have the conscious of environment, and also we have technology by a satellite to see the Earth from the space widely. And the second one is extreme environment, and we have lots of extreme environment which is beneficial for the something like the microgravity, and also the high vacuum and extreme low temperature, which is very difficult to get, almost impossible to get on the Earth. and it's very expensive to us. If we go to the Earth, it's free of charge. If we can go to the Earth, because of space, I mean. And the third one, the limit breakthrough. So that with this kind of idea of wave effect and also extreme environment, we can find, we can create a new solution which is beyond the limit of the Earth. So, for example, so the Yokogawa is an automation company, and we are automating the largest hydrogen plant in Rotterdam in Europe. But the customer is having a challenge to promote a green hydrogen because it's expensive. Not because it's expensive, but the competition is very low. Like a fossil oil, gas, and coal is much lower than the hydrogen. So we have all the private company has shareholders. Why shareholders can accept the investment which will decrease their profit? So this is a very fundamental issue, but on the moon, there is no fossil. If you find a fossil, it's weird, but there's no fossil. So there's no way but we should choose the hydrogen as a source of energy. So this is just one example. And there are many examples like overview effect about the satellite remote sensing for the environment protection, monitoring, and also we cannot live without the GPS, etc. And for the extreme environment on ISS, Yokogawa Electric has one payload for the ISS about life science experiment for the stem cell growth, etc. So this kind of microgravity is useful for the new medicine development or new material development. And for the limit breakthrough, as I said that on the moon, air is not there and water should be there, so we can utilize the resources. And the temperature can go up, down like hell, so that we can create the environment completely recyclable, which can be utilized as a model of a circular economy on the Earth. So using this new variable space, we can just not go to the space, but using these three values, you can create a beneficial solution which can also be beneficial for the moon. For the Earth, I mean. And so to solve all the SDGs issue, it said that we need more than $10 trillion necessary. So it's a huge money, and if we can utilize a small amount of money, we can develop the new technology and new solution on the inner space, and we can benefit to the Earth. So we have a both win and win situation. So there are so many the solutions which can be born in space and also which can be beneficial for the Earth. But due to time limitation, I'll skip to that and also go to the one example which Yokogawa has been developing. So the first of all, why moon, which is the closest potential industrial location on the Earth or the space. So to have an infrastructure moon, we need lots of various kinds of industry players, and we have land and the gravity, which is the closest environment in the space for the ideal, the potential place for the industrialization. And lunar industry is emerging. Thanks to the finding of the water, we can have the potential to have a sustainable presence there. And also, as I said, that all the technology born on the moon can be beneficial to solve the issues on the Earth. So this chart Niels showed yesterday, so I don't repeat that. But if we find really the water, we can divide it into the hydrogen and oxygen by electrolyzer. And the hydrogen can be used to the energy of propellant. And also the oxygen can be used the human habitation or ECRUS. These are the environment control and life support system, very interesting, the technology. And we can utilize for this technology for the various, the issues on the ground. So this is a kind of a closed system, and Yokogawa is a process automation company. We are very good at having a closed system. So now we are working closely with a partner to utilize, something comes up to the human body, for the thing to completely circulate to have a closed loop system. So this means that looking back to this one, this energy supply chain is created by the resource of water on the moon, but the energy source is only the solar power. So this means that with only the solar power, we can create energy source and also oxygen, and this can be circulated via this Equus system. So if this can be realized, so the carbon dioxide can be, the recycled, and also all the waste and sewage can be recycled. So we can create a kind of off-grid system on the moon. So this technology can be beneficial to solve all the environmental issue and climate change and the water problem, etc. Okay, so we are developing several the sensors, but not a new sensor, but converting several sensor. This is just an example of the tunable diode laser spectrometer, which can measure moisture when H2O and O2 and the oxygen monoxide and the carbon dioxide, etc. So now this is the final image of our contribution to nuclear electric. We are now providing the sensors and developing together with iSpace and the Chodo Corporation to create the water analyzer to really allocate weather water. And then these resources can be utilized for the infrastructure and human beings using the ecosystem. And the remote control is now jointly developing with the JGC Corporation. So, okay, now it's time to close due to the time constraint. So in space, there are new values beyond the Earth. New values, there are values, but the space people tend to just think about space, go to space, but don't look at the Earth. But there are good things we can develop in the space, and they can be utilized to the benefit of the Earth. So let's work together to achieve the good life on the Earth too. Thank you very much.
Fascinating technology. Thank you very much. And now I have the honor of introducing our final speaker, but he needs no introduction. Giuseppe Ribaldi. He is also going to speak about, it dovetails nicely with the last comment about lunar exploration and the Earth environment.
Okay, so thank you. I am going to do very fast because it's what it separates us from the coffee break. So I think this is basically something which I announced yesterday, but basically the issue is related to 4 questions that we have tried to ask ourselves. That Ria can take the microphone. Is it working? Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, okay, sorry. Okay, so you can see those are the 4 questions. First, we are considering the Earth and the Moon as 2 separate bodies. In reality, they were not. And so I think it is time that we really start to take them really in terms of how they are connected. First. The second, what is the risk, basically, that a lot of mission going outside Earth have on the Earth environment? That's something which many of us might not like to talk about, but I think we do need. When SpaceX will increase the rate of launches and all over the places, this might have an impact on Earth atmosphere, and it's time that we, space community, talk about rather than the Earth environment talk about. You need to understand the Earth environment do not see particularly positively, shall I say, the lunar exploration. So I think what the effort is trying to do is to try to bring together the 2 communities. And then the question is, will lunar activity, of course, impact the lunar environment? That's obviously something which, again, is reasonably clear, but we have to reduce. And then the last question is, can we try to help climate change by having lunar exploration? Now, those are questions that they might seem a little bit vague and not so much scientifically, but I think it's time that we are approaching. And so what we did, and by the way, this activity is done together with the Frank White Institute. So thank you to Satoru-san, which mentioned already him. So this is an activity which we did together with other organizations. I'm presenting on behalf of these other people. And so in order to kick off this issue, we had an expert panel, which was heard not by chance on the Earth Day. And this panel was participating by a lot of people, as you can see there, and including also Indian natives, which brought their point of view about the environment. So this is a topic which the lunar community needs to start to tackle. And so I think the main outcome of this, you will be able to see them. There is no time to go through. But there is a feeling that there is a clear, basically, interaction between the moon and as a part of the Earth environment. Many of you might have heard that during the COVID, the temperature of the moon has changed of 30 degrees because of the different reflection process. So we need to bring around the same table, as you will see, Earth and lunar scientists to really try to understand the interaction between the two. And of course, the climate change and bringing in our consideration of the exploration of the moon, the environment, being the lunar environment, as well as the Earth environment, it is important. We need to get along together with the environmental community, which is a very powerful, basically, groups all over the world, and we need to be on the same side. At the moment, we seem to be on the same side, but when you talk with them, not completely. So we have no time, so I'm not going to go through some of the considerations which you might find in the paper. We will bring the paper inside the PowerPoint, let's say, so that you can see a lot of detail. But one first chart talks about the lunar environment. What is the impact of going there on the lunar environment? You heard that we have a working group 1, which is looking about this for the GEXLA. There are also considerations about how people of different culture consider the lunar exploration. And some of these, let's say, it was amazing to hear what the people from North America, the Indians from North America, felt about, let's say, going to the moon and how is the relationship between the Earth and the moon exploration. And I think so that is about inclusion, try to discuss with them. Because going to the moon is not just United States, China, it's the whole world which goes to the moon. And I think we need to understand what is their feeling, what do they think about. So that's an important aspect. So that's why, bottom line, we launched the initiative Moon for Earth initiative, which is trying to integrate lunar exploration and utilization and how this can mitigate, if any, climate change. So it seems to be a very theoretical, let's say, exercise, but I don't think it is, and I think we shall see. So therefore, we will need to support lunar sustainable environment by including environmental considerations from the beginning. You can see debris mitigation, all this kind of thing. We want to avoid the mess that we did on Earth going to the moon. And I think this is something that we need to be clear between ourselves. We need to increase the scientific understanding of the interaction between the Earth and the moon. And so in order to do that, then we are talking about possibility to define some policy statement. So therefore, looking ahead, how we plan to move, and by the way, this is a call for people to join us, different organizations. So we are going to follow a similar approach that we did with GEXLA. So we're going to go first for a call of interest, find out are people interested in this topic. Then we will establish a group of experts. You have seen for GEXLA, so this we call it Global Expert Group on Earth, Moon Environment, which should be basically Earth and lunar scientists. Lunar science, we have it. We are now looking particularly for Earth scientists. And then, of course, we will, in the frame of the project plan, we will try to understand first the science, what are the critical area, and then basically trying to see, by using this group, what are the potential solution and how these affect the way of going forward for the lunar exploration and utilization. So I think, and then eventually we'll end up with some drafting possible policy, let's say, recommendation for moving forward for the lunar exploration and utilization. So the email is there. If anybody is interested, you're mostly welcome to write that email. And of course, we are looking forward to create an organization which help all together to move in this direction. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, but I have to close now because we are late. Okay, thank you.
Very well done, Giuseppe. He is not only our leader and executive, but also, as you see, a creative thinker. So thank you all for joining me today. This was a fascinating collection of papers, and I look forward to talking to you all, and I'm sure you'll speak among yourselves and ask them any questions that I did not allow today. But I will take one now, certainly. Dr. Wong, did you have a question? Yes. Let's get you a microphone.
Thank you very much. This morning, I'm not a lawyer, but I know that there's a lot of things regarding to the legal things. So I'm the projector operator. So it's in the morning. It's talking about a lot of the legal aspect of the admins and the RS. So firstly, I'm sorry that firstly I appreciate the contribution of a lot of the lawyers do a lot of work on this legal study, and I'm also sorry that is not much of the Chinese the legal aspect on the RS, because in the beginning phase we are more focusing on the engineering and the scientists. So it's the legal aspect is not contributing much. But I'm thinking that is we are late, but there's still we are doing something to match what is already done by the admin's code. But frankly speaking, that is I'm thinking there is still a lot of questions is not clearly answered by the admin's code. It's just two questions. Yeah, so I will answer asking to the legal colleagues. For example, I'm an engineer, so I'm just quite directly. So, for example, if it's assumed that someone is a company or country has found out the rich mining is underground, but it's on the lander side of Apollo 11 or under the footprint of Armstrong. So is that this company or country have right to mining for this site or not? So if it's a Chinese, if it's an American company, if it's a Chinese company or Russian company, if it's other state like China, Russia, or French or Germany, is that have right or not? This is I think is for the admin's code is not answer us about this operational questions. The second one is regarding to the South Pole. You know this if you are engineer, you know that is the South Pole of the moon is not big like the Earth, so it's there's a small part. So it's you see that in the yesterday's presentation that is on the basic phase of the IRS, the operational range is about 100 kilometers. It's almost cover whole of the South Pole. So as I know, that is the admin's program, not admin's code. The admin's program is have more capability of this activity range. So it could be the 1,000 kilometers. And on the second phase, the second of the rover of this high pressure the rover could be have the range of the 10,000 kilometers. It's cover the whole of the surface of the moon. So if by the safe zone reason, of course, we don't want to have called the safe zone. We prefer to call it a coordination zone. Yeah, I hope this is not the forbidden zone. Yeah, that is possible to talk about with the country or person or company already have activity on this zone. What if you refuse? So what if for the second country, third country, and the other country the following? So I think those questions is also not answered by the admin's code. So I'm thinking that they still have a lot of such of legal issue. It's not answered by admin's code. So I need that the lawyer friends to give the answer. Thank you very much.
Very well said. Thank you for that closing piece, and I don't think we're going to solve those questions here, but you give us important things to think about, and that it's going to be. But I will. Yeah. Yes. Well, I will. I will just share my quick thoughts on that. Is that I hope that everyone's cultural heritage is preserved and respected. To what extent? Every footprint? Or where will we draw the line? You know, where will we draw the line? And we can't have the debate here, but clearly there is a discussion to be had. I see that you have something on the tip of your tongue, so.
Should we just move the footprint of trunks to the other place, or
Yeah.
we were asking the allowed if it's a U.S. government?
Yes, yeah. Well, I think we better leave it at that, but very provocative ideas. And I want to thank you all again. I think it's time to adjourn and go get some coffee. So thank you again, and thank you to all the speakers.
Sorry for wasting time for everybody.
At PwC, we've learned that trust